At the time when the earth became hot, at the time when the heavens seethed and churned, at the time when the sun was darkened to cause the moon to shine, the time of the rise of the Pleiades, the source of darkness that made the darkness, the source of the night that made the night, the intense darkness, the deep darkness. Thus, from the darkness, from the depths of the great seas, Hawaii was born unto the world of light.
Mapukanu kalawa e mapuno I tapole o tawai aloha. Aloha I ke kapa e hukai, huki palai, huki lo le no e kauna. Noi mai la kalehua makanoi, noi kalehua makanoi. Noi vivo ole anu ikiela ti paulai. Ala e tu ni makanaka o mauna hinai. E hina no paha, hua ole no. E hina no paha e tau. E ka ahanui e alialai. E anu ale nui.
From Tahiti, a great migration of seafaring people and their gods descended upon the golden sand of these untouched islands. Rich soils were tilled and planted as fruits of the ocean provided abundant harvests. A new civilization emerged whose spirituality centered upon a pantheon of elemental gods. It was the fire goddess Pele, who evoked fear and awe in the hearts and minds of the Hawaiian people. Pele, the woman of the pit. Pele, the carver of lands. This morning we pay homage to Pele through the ancient stylings of the classical hula kahiko. As Pele migrated from Kahike, she is accompanied by members of her family and gods. Upon arriving in Hawaii, Pele is greeted by her brothers and sisters with a raw elemental display of nature: rain, lightning, quaking, ocean waves, and cloud formations. Pele responds by shaking, breaking, and crushing the earth as a statement of her power.
Ai, haole mai, Pele mai, kaiki mai, eli kau mai.
Haule mai, Pele mai, taiti mai. O ka he kili o ke olai o ka ua loku. Ka ua paka o hae hae lau me iku o na wahine I ta wau mau ke le lai. O mai ana Pele li ula e. Au miki, au hoki, ta hale kulolo an wanu a tamo ana I tali ni o Pele. O te tu anu I te tu lalu nau talani. Vai a ka papaku, a papa I au a. Ka papa a ka nema I he e a I maui. Lahi li o pua, he kua o kala. A vai a ka halalo a ia ke a heli kau mai. E komo ma loko hale mau mau. A mauna pu e o la la ne. A kuli pe e nui a ia kua. E Pele, e Pele, e Pele, e Pele. E Pele, e Pele, huaina ku. E komo ma loko hale mau mau. A mauna pu e o la la ne. A tuli pe e nui a ia kua. E Pele, e Pele, e Pele, e Pele. E Pele, e Pele, huaina ku. Pahu pahu hama I o talani ani. Pahu pahu hama I o kalani ani. Pahu pahu hama I o kalani ani. Hei noa no Pele.
With thunder thirst, the hungry sky calls forth cloud drums, driving rains, and stabs the earth with hot spears of jagged light, that Pele's primal fire may know that she has a worthy rival in the heavens.
Ho'oma Coco. Kumeo malani kawane walo makani walo na iluna o ayole hua aloha e ana ikawai ku auhoi mana o aku papi o huli ya ene kamana o kala na maiki iki ikaina o kawai koi o ko ike kai ika kaleva onu alolo Nukaleo ke kai ka kaleva onu alolo Uka uoka una o ke kai na pali Uka o makama ya kauai ka makani hali ka ua holi o hali no mena o hikilolo kukuni vela Ke ai o kamaile e velo e la makapali makuaiki imihia mai e kavai olo yalo a ole kalai Ikamakani ya huli kunu ikapai o puai ke ao Hani ke uai ke po o a ho a kapa he Pa kikai kavai a kali ula pa kele kai ki o pua Li ke ko e lili kapaka ua ka ua iluna o kala au E ho o la au ana ya hanale Au hanale kai lui ka ua lui na apa na vai Kali kwa maama wike kai kalimu ke kanaka o manu akepa Nani kilo hanai kawai o ke mamo Ke likole ua yano kuka pele Waino ka wana ului Ui hoi ke ko olau Hanuni ke auleva O pue ke anu no maele Ike o me kani o no hili Ilika wa pukuina o palaka vai Ai ala e ala e ala e ala e ai
Our journey through the mists of time and myth has ended. Your journey, however, has just begun. Eia Hawaii, he moku, he kanaka. Here indeed is Hawaii, an island of ancient peoples, where the voices of the past echo strongly and proudly in the hearts of all Hawaiians today. Aloha!
Yo kala ho ai ke onoi ulua e ka oi anoi ka malu ike ina o ku kaniloko aina ka ulana ka kuhihava ai ka vai olua o eva na pua ini mai mo alai e velina mai E ola mauno aloha aloha
Please welcome Conference of Mayors President, Columbia Mayor Steve Benjamin.
Good morning. I'm sorry. Aloha. Welcome to the official opening session of the 87th Annual Meeting of the United States Conference of Mayors. Please join me in giving these fantastic performers a round of applause. It's always my honor to recognize my colleagues and our officers, my friend Brian Barnett, the Vice President of this conference, the Mayor of Rochester Hills, Michigan, and our second Vice President, Greg Fisher, the Mayor of the great city of Louisville, our past President, Elizabeth Couts, our Mayor of Burnsville, Minnesota, and our CEO and Executive Director, Tom Cochran. Please give them a round of applause. I joked yesterday at the press conference that the good mayors never go away, so I do also want to acknowledge several of our former mayors who are also presidents of this great conference who attended this meeting. We have Wellington Webb of Denver, Don Pasqualic of Akron, Doug Palmer, one person from Akron here, okay, all right. Doug Palmer, was that actually Don cheering for himself? Okay. Doug Palmer of Trenton, New Jersey, Antonio Villaraigosa of Los Angeles, Mike Nutter of Philadelphia, and Mick Cornett of Oklahoma City. Please give them all a round of applause. They served this conference so well, and we're thankful for the legacy of leadership. Now I ask all of you, please stand as we sing our national anthem. It'll be sung by Amy Hana'i Alali. All right. Followed by the Hawaiian State Anthem. Please, Amy.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. Hawaii ponoi nanai komoi kalani ali ke ali makualani e kamehameha e na kawae pole me kaihe makualani e kamehameha e na kawae pole me kaihe.
That was beautiful. Allison? Allison? Oh, she can hear me. I'm going to do my job, you do your job. All right? Amy did a fantastic job. We were also joined by the former Miss Hawaii, Allison Chu. And I wanted to recognize Allison. All right. We good? Thank you all so much. We need each other to keep ourselves in check, so thank y'all. Now the invocation will be given by Kahu Cordell of Kahu Kekoa Ministerial Services in Honolulu. Please.
Aloha kakaya kakako, aloha. A very good morning to you. As you have seen some of the things that we do here in Hawaii, we're a very place that is filled with a lot of aloha. So I'd like to begin with that spirit of aloha. You know, we haven't been here with our Council of Mayors since the 60s. And so I'd like you to turn to the person next to you. This is a part of our invocation, our beginning of our plenary session today. And I'd just like you to say to them, just look at them and don't do the Waikiki aloha. Just go, aloha. Go ahead. That's beautiful. You know, that's a very important word for us in Hawaii. I'd like you to think of the front part of your face. In our Hawaiian language, that is the word alo. And the word ha is the word for breath. So when we express aloha to one another, what you're really doing in our ancient ways of all of Polynesia, they would touch their foreheads together and then touch their noses together, and then they would breathe the same air. That's aloha to us. And so when you say aloha to someone, it's a very deep connection to the person next to you. So that was a good beginning for our time together this morning. So now you know it's very special when someone says aloha to you in Hawaii. It's not just a hello or a goodbye. Sometimes people don't know whether the Hawaiians are coming or going, because we say aloha all the time, but it's really a deep meaning of reverence to one another and to the place. Now, Hawaii is a place of excellence, and for us as mayors in government, today is not about what we do, but really who we are and who we represent. And so in Hawaii, what you saw here with our hula, we also bring the love of the Lord Jesus Christ to all of our Hawaiian islands, all of the United States of America. And so we blend together all of that in Hawaii. So there's a sign, many of you in your states, you have a hand signal that you might give to other people when you wave at them. Some of you are signs that you probably shouldn't. Thank you for giggling. But in Hawaii, we give a thumbs up, but then you bring out your pinky. So would you do that with me, please? Just give, we call this a shaka. So now would you give 2 shakas? One for each person on each side of you, and would you connect pinkies with them? Now as we join our pinkies together, my family, as mayors, we may be divided in counties and cities and things like that, but what we do, we are united together. And so you are connected with one another. And Hawaii is one of those very, very blessed places that does highlight that aloha, that love. I want you to know that wherever you come from, the aloha spirit is there. We just call it aloha here. But you have your people that share in that love. I'm going to begin with our simple pule, our prayer, to begin our time together. Go, keep holding that, connecting that finger. Oh, no. Thought you were done, huh? No. My prayer is only 20 minutes, so just go ahead and get. I'm just joking. I'm just joking. Will you bow your heads with me, please, as you continue to connect with that person next to you? E ole aku au ya Yehova I ka manawa o kou ola ana. E ho'olea no ho'i au I ke akua a I ko'u hopena. Amene no ko kākoa ke akuloha. Ka nani ke akamai. Ka ho'omaikai, ka hano, ka mana, ka ikaika. Iau aku, iau aku, iau aku. Kia koa, as we gather as the mayors, as we gather together to celebrate America, to celebrate the great things that you have blessed us with in this world. Kia koa, we come for very important work. Today is not about just us. It's about our communities. It's about our world. It's about our states. It's about our country. But kia koa, for us in Hawaii, we also celebrate our children. We call them the Pua o Hawaii, the flowers of Hawaii. And so what we do here this weekend also is not just for our generation, but it's for the generations to come. 2 generations, 3 generations from now. So I pray your blessings upon every conversation, every decision, everything that we talk about, everything that we feel. So Lord, my final pule for our invocation, our blessing, before we leave these Hawaiian Islands, for each one of these who have gathered for our conference, may they look up to the mountains and dream big for their city and their county, for their jurisdiction. Dream big for the greatness that you have for all of us. We pule this blessing with much aloha. Amen no kiaku apau. Amen, amen, amen. Would you give a high five to those people on both sides of you? Have a great conference. Aloha.
Some of you are still holding pinkies. You can let go now. I want to thank you so much, Kahu Cordell. Now it's an incredible pleasure to introduce our host for this meeting. Mayor Kirk Caldwell was elected in 2013 and has been a very active member of the United States Conference of Mayors. The mayor and his team have worked tirelessly in preparation for this conference to welcome us to this beautiful and historic city of Honolulu. We're so fortunate to be here in Honolulu for the next several days. I want to personally thank Mayor Caldwell for his work on our behalf. Before we hear from the mayor, we're going to see a special video prepared by our host city.
I have come here to speak to the mayors of the United States on a matter which concerns us all, and that is how the American people can live more happily and more securely together. This island represents all that we are and all that we hope to be.
I get a little choked up when I hear him speak, but I'm also proud of the fact he recognized how unique Hawaii was. It was a place of hope for him. He recognized that great diversity and inclusion, and he dreamed that someday the rest of his country would look like us. And I think as we gather here at the Conference of Mayors, more than 60 years after President Kennedy spoke here, for me, it gives great hope about our country, that we're a place of this ongoing experiment in democracy. One of the most important and most central Hawaiian words to me is the word pono, which means finding balance. And the Hawaiians felt that was central to how you live, in balance with nature, in balance with your fellow human being. And that's part of this infrastructure we're talking about here. How do we find that balance? Infrastructure, I think, is what brings us all together. For the City and County of Honolulu, we're building the first inner-city rail project that's going to be driverless. You know, from our massive rebuild of our sewer system at $5.2 billion, and hooked up with things like our innovative protected bike lane, integrating all of this together so we can live in a better, more positive way. We're bringing a new way to live in the urban core, but we're staying focused on things that connect all of us together. We still have much work to do, but we need to remind ourselves of our better angels that were expressed by President Kennedy back in June of 1963.
I am glad to come here on this occasion and to tell you that those of us who live to the east of you look to you, and indeed in these difficult days, to all Americans who represent the best hope on earth.
All that we are and all that we hope to be. And my hope is after the 4 days here in Honolulu, we'll leave a little closer to that dream of inclusion and acceptance and balance that's so important for democracy and so important for all of us in our various cities around the country.
Good morning and aloha. I got choked up again. I'm so proud to host this conference. I'm so proud to have all of you here. Thank you. All that we are and all that we hope to be. You know, I have on stage with me this morning our Governor David Ige, the first Okinawan governor in the history of our country and the second Japanese-American governor in the history of our country. I am so proud that we're a place of diversity and inclusion. On the stage with me this morning, we have newly elected Mayor Derek Kawakami of Japanese-American ancestry from Kauai. And I'm also so proud to have on the stage with me this morning the newly elected mayor of the county of Maui, Mayor Victorino of Portuguese-American ancestry. And while not on the stage with us today, I'm so proud that we have Mayor Harry Kim, the mayor of the island of Hawaii, Korean-American ancestry, who's working so hard to help his island recover from the volcano you saw, Madam Pele, erupted and covered a part of his island last year. And he's also recovering from devastating storms in the past year or two. But Harry Kim, Korean-American. You know, the native Hawaiian people, our first peoples, would say, we don't own the land. The land owns us. And Madam Pele showed that in spades last year in Kapoho. She showed that, well, the American Western concept is we own fee title. She covered it and created hundreds and hundreds of acres of new land. So we don't own the land land owns us. But they also said that if we love the land will love us back. To have love for land, you need people. And those first people who sailed here in double hull sailing canoes, navigated by the stars, way before people like Columbus would leave the sight of land. But to give those stars meaning, you needed people to interpret what those stars stood for. And we are a beautiful place, I think, for two very simple reasons. Now, one is the land. You know, you sit here in Waikiki today, and if you paddled out with me or Derek, I don't know if Mayor Victorino surfs, but if you paddled out with us right in front of here, you'd catch great waves. It's not too big today, but you'd look down and you'd see beautiful tropical fish. And if you came home with me after this conference ends to the Valley of Manoa, just behind Waikiki, a 10-minute drive, I could take you hiking in a rainforest. And there's nowhere, I think, in any other city in our country where you can be so close to natural beauty and still be in a dense urban core. And that's the land and that's the sea. But I think the more incredible part is the beauty of our people. There's no one race in the majority here. We're all minority. All of us standing on this stage are all minority. And we work together to try to become connected, and the most amazing thing is we're blending into all different shades of brown as our state and city evolves. You know, if you came up with me to for example, our 4th of July picnic, or a New Year's Day party, or what a baby luau, which is a first birthday baby party, or any number of events, you're going to find people asking you, hey, where you went to high school? You know, where did you go to high school? They don't care where you went to college. They want to know, where did you go to high school? And where do you work? And where do you live? And they're not being nosy. We call that niele. They don't want to know just because they're nosy. They're trying to find out where you went to school, where you work, where you live, because they want to say, I know someone who went to your school. Do you know that person? Or where they work or where you live? They then have a connection to you. They want to connect. They want to know who you are and how do we connect to each other. And that's why the first peoples looked at our island state as the blue continent. it wasn't just the aina, the land, it was the ocean that surrounds it. And it was a place of connection, not of separation, of building bridges. And we really are connected to everyone else. The blue continent and a blue planet. We've talked a lot about climate crisis and emergency that we're facing. And in some ways, I think all of us are in that double hull sailing canoe that came from Tahiti to Hawaii. They did round trips back then. And we're all paddling together to protect this beautiful planet. We know this intrinsically as mayors in each of our city homes. And it's just so important that we continue to work together. It's that connection that we feel every time we come to U.S. Conference of Mayors meeting. You know, for me, coming to these meetings, I've met folks with the Knight, Riyadh, and George, and people at MasterCard. They're here at this Conference of Mayors to help us connect, to help our city connect, and I hope you will take some of what they're doing back with you to connect to your constituencies. And it is that connection, that aloha, that we hope you will feel here and then take home with you after Monday. You know, aloha does mean love. As the kahu said, he says hello, goodbye, giving breath, and it means love too. And we can sure use more of that love in our country today. And you know, we're here in a very special place, the Hilton Hawaiian Village. And the Hawaiians have a term for a special place, wahipana. It means a place you need to care for and preserve for future generations. And for me, it's a special place because what happened here in 1963 in the film you just saw, where we had our president come to the U.S. Conference of Mayors on his trip back from Japan, and just a short 5 months later, he was assassinated. But he talked about a more perfect union and all that he hoped we could be in June of 1963. That was the first time Hawaii hosted the U.S. Conference of Mayors. We hosted again in 1967 in the throes of the Vietnam War. But we're back again, and I'm so proud of that. This man, our president, dreamed big in a time when our country had much hope and dreams. He dreamed of putting a man on the moon in 10 years and did it in 7. He created the Peace Corps, and young men and women went all over this planet showing love and taking care of people who needed to be taken care of. And he talked about civil rights in 1963 as his country went into the throes of trying to create that more perfect union that our President Abraham Lincoln dreamed of, but didn't live to see. This president devoted his entire speech to civil rights. And on the stage with him that day were some people from Hawaii. One of them was Senator Hiram Fong, the first and only elected Chinese American senator in the history of our country. On that stage was Senator Daniel Keanoi of Japanese American ancestry and the first Asian American, Japanese American elected to the United States Senate. And on that stage was Representative Sparky Matsunaga of Japanese American ancestry serving in the House of Representatives. These men and those that followed fought hard for a more perfect Hawaii. And it allowed people like my wife, Donna Tanoi, who's here, and our daughter, Maya Hisako Caldwell. I'd like them to just stand up and be recognized. If you could stand up, Donna and Maya. But our president and these men and those that followed fought for more equality and inclusion. It allowed people like my wife to become the bank commissioner for the state of Hawaii and the chairman of the FDIC under Clinton, creating opportunity and setting an example for other women, including our daughter. He dreamed that someday the rest of his country to the east would look like Hawaii with inclusion and diversity. And the living epitome of that dream is in our President, Barack Obama. You know, he is a native son of the city and county of Honolulu in the state of Hawaii. And I'm sorry, Chicago, we had him before you did. And we prepared him for you, Chicago. And we prepared him for the rest of our country. And when we in Hawaii hear him speak, we do hear our voice. He has a certain tone and expressions of love and inclusion. And he's a blend of two races. His father from Kenya and his mother from the Midwest met at the East-West Center at the University of Hawaii, just up the valley from here. You know, when he spoke in Charleston about the horrific shooting at the Emmanuel AME Church, we in Hawaii heard his voice of inclusion. So much so that when I went to Charleston, the community here asked me to bring a ho'okupu to the church, which is an offering, because they were just moved by his speech and his voice, as many of us in America were. You know, he spoke of love and inclusion and not being hateful in a place that had every right to be hateful. I was hopeful that the president could be here for this event, and he wanted to come, but he had promised his family, his youngest daughter, to take her on a trip to Europe. And he deserves to spend time with his family. But I do have a letter from him here with me to all of you, and we'll get a copy of it delivered to your room, thanking all of you for coming here and working together for a more perfect union and a better America. You know, yes, President Kennedy, back in 1963, dreamed a huge, gigantic, big dream. And he didn't live to see the realization of his dream. But along with President Obama, he is the father of equality and the realization of that dream. Mayor Benjamin is an example of that dream. Mayor Garcetti is an example of that dream. Mayor Pete is an example of that dream. Mayor Calderon is an example of that dream. Mayor Julian Castro is an example of that dream. And there's so many others. You know, our country struggles with making a fair place for everyone. And even our city and county of Honolulu, state of Hawaii, is not perfect. But as someone who's a Zen master told me, you know, Kirk, the imperfect is perfect. We may be imperfect, working towards the imperfectness always. So in conclusion, it is my hope that you'll feel the aloha while you're here, and I think you have. It is my hope that when you swim in our healing waters of the Pacific Ocean, you'll feel the powers in that hope. I hope that when you walk on the lands, you'll hear the voices of our people, our first peoples, and those who followed, who worked on the plantations and made us that very diverse place. And I hope that when you return home to your cities, that you'll take a little bit of our aloha back with you, our love, and that you'll make your city a place of greater inclusion, acceptance, and love. And by doing so, you'll make our country a better country and our planet a better place to live for everyone. Mahalo and aloha. Love all of you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome U.S. Conference of Mayors CEO and Executive Director Tom Cochran.
Thank you so much, Mayor Caldwell. What a great joy it's been working with you and your team. Dr. Martin Luther King once said, you don't have to have a college degree. You don't have to make your subject agree with your verb. You don't have to know about Plato and Aristotle. And you don't have to know about Albert Einstein's relativity theory to be a public servant. He said, all you have to have is a heart full of grace and a soul generated by love, and you can be that servant. And ladies and gentlemen, we thank God today for our servant, Stephen K. Benjamin. He was born and raised in Queens, and his mama and his daddy took him to the South from whence they came. They found joy in their boy, and he went to college. He went to South Carolina. He was from Queens, but guess what? People liked him. There's been trouble ever since. His heart was full of grace. His soul generated his love. And his mind on politics pushed him forward to be received by those students in South Carolina when they elected him president of the student body. That same heart full of grace, that soul generating with love, combined with the agile, mobile, and sharp political sense of leadership, brought him to us when he was elected the mayor, brought him to us to be the president of the United States Conference of Mayors at a time, ladies and gentlemen, in some of the most divided parts of our history of the United States. In the Bible, the Benjamin tribe were fierce fighters. The biblical name means son of strength, son of the South. The Apostle Paul, who served God mightily, said, I am a tribe of the Benjamin. I have fought a good fight. I have kept the faith. Our president has restored the faith in each one of us. And today, we, the United States, Conference of Mayors is a mighty force that has to be reckoned with. Born in Queens, he is our king. But let me tell you something. To every man and woman running for president of the United States, he is the king of South Carolina. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, he is today the king of mayors. He loves us, and we love him. Stephen K. Benjamin, thank you.
We know that the mayor is involved every single day on creating jobs and creating safe communities. What we don't think about as much is our role in creating the proper tone in which our citizens treat each other by, how we actively play a role in creating compassionate cities for all people. Mayors from across America focus on infrastructure and innovation and inclusion will help and lead the country towards a more united and more prosperous future. On priorities like sentencing reform, environmental management, fighting opioid addiction, and agriculture and nutrition, our nation's roads, bridges, transportation networks, and water systems not only need to be repaired, but modernized with cutting-edge green technology. We must preserve this great nation we've inherited. Build for the future, build it for our children and generations yet to come. As we do so, we have to view change as an inescapable messenger of opportunity. Opportunity is certainly before us. The people of our three nations, Mexico, Canada, and the US, share, as I said earlier, much more than common borders. We share common bonds. Every day, mayors engage in practical work. We roll up our sleeves, we sprint towards the fire, and look for common sense solutions wherever we can find them. Actions that we take, the leadership that we choose to exhibit, will leave a mark well beyond our city's municipal boundaries and our time in office. Each of you, being a member of this collective that we call the United States Conference of Mayors, is a recognition of our oneness. So while there's so much more work to be done, the battle often sometimes feels uphill, there's still certainly hope for good governance all across America at all levels. Mayors will lead that charge.
We're united in our fight for justice. We're united in our fight for what is right. We're a country that upholds the unwavering values of inclusion, compassion, and respect.
But mark my words, the mayors are not ever going to slow down. The American dream is not dead. It's more alive now than ever, if we will it. Our elected officials must, I repeat, must lead in a way that brings about meaningful action that benefit the whole of our nation. The reality is that we are stronger when we're working together, when we're working to build strong, healthy communities where every single individual's value is recognized, but we realize that we are stronger as a community. And to seeing those principles on display here, it's pretty cool.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States Conference of Mayors, Stephen K. Benjamin.
It's Tuesday morning, June 22nd, 1954. A young woman named Sarah Mae Fleming, a domestic worker, is standing on the corner of Washington and Main Street in downtown Columbia waiting for the bus to take her to work. Her 21st birthday is just 6 days away. So maybe she's thinking about that, wondering if someone's planning a party for her, or she'll get some time off to celebrate. Maybe she's thinking about the weather, the thick, humid heat that blankets our state from May to September. Maybe she's just preoccupied with the task at hand, planning the day of work ahead of her. Just a few weeks earlier, the United States Supreme Court, led by Chief Justice Earl Warren, had issued its historic ruling in Brown versus Board of Education, overturning nearly 60 years of precedent and declaring for the first time in American history that the old segregationist principle of separate but equal was unconstitutional. So it's possible that she was thinking about that. But she never could have imagined that in less than 2 years that Chief Justice Warren would know her name, that the Supreme Court would be deciding her fate, and that her actions would echo across our nation and across history. It's Tuesday morning, June 22nd, 1954. And Sarah Mae Fleming can't imagine what's going to happen when she steps on that bus and takes the only open seat that she can find. She doesn't see it coming, the outrage and humiliation, the shouting insults and assault, the clenched fist punching into her gut. She doesn't see it coming, but neither did they. They couldn't have imagined this young woman from Eastover South Carolina, beaten and cast aside, would have the courage to get back up, the audacity to sue the bus company, and the steel spine to see it through, laying the foundation in action and in law for another woman in Montgomery, Alabama, named Rosa Parks the next year. You see, Sarah Mae Fleming wasn't looking for a fight, she wasn't looking for a cause, and she wasn't looking to make history. History found her, and she chose to act. In the good book, the prophet Isaiah speaks of his mighty dream. When the heavens opened up with a vision of terrible majesty and God himself and angels stood before him, Isaiah was awestruck and frightened. He cried out, "Woe is me, for I am undone, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips. For mine eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts." You see, Isaiah was a sinner, just like the rest of us. Small and imperfect before the full glory of heaven. He was terrified and shaken. But when the Lord asked, "Whom shall I send? Who will go for us?" Isaiah gathered himself, he stood, dusted himself off, and he said, "I will. Here am I, send me. Here am I, send me." Sarah Mae Fleming wasn't looking for a fight, she wasn't looking for a cause, and she wasn't looking to make history. History found her. She'd tell you that God called her, and she answered, "Here am I, send me." Aloha, my friends. Always careful to respect the importance of the secular work that we do as government leaders in the temple of democracy. I cannot help but look back over the arc of the life that many would have legitimately expected to be unremarkable, and yet I stand here in the long shadow of President John F. Kennedy Jr. addressing America's mayors, Mayor Caldwell in Honolulu, Hawaii. So I must greet you in the marvelous and matchless and merciful name of my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Thankful for the blessings of ordering my steps over these 49 years of my life. To my friends of the house of David, I greet you in the words of peace, shalom. To my friends who are followers of the Prophet Muhammad, I say assalamu alaikum. For those of you who follow the world's other great religions or choose to follow no religion at all, I greet you like my nephew DJ does and say, "What's up?" That's to everyone. As we think of the example of men and women like Sarah Mae Fleming, a name that I'm sure many of you may have never heard, but I will tell you that each one of your cities has a Sarah Mae Fleming. Each one of your cities has men and women who work to build this great country that we call home. Ordinary people doing extraordinary things to lay the foundation of possibility for me to stand here before you as the leader of this precious organization that I love so much. And we discussed the nuances and the challenges and opportunities of infrastructure and innovation and inclusion. Our mantra and bipartisan strategy to move America forward. I want each of us to take a moment to digest and reflect on how far this great nation has come because of the bold leadership of the United States Conference of Mayors. In the vanguard of every major social justice movement that defined the second half of the 20th century, this organization, our USCM, has served as a platform for us to see what can happen in America when seemingly ordinary people are given the opportunity to be extraordinary. When we speak to and act on the value of bold, inclusive leadership, mayors of every creed, race, faith tradition, gay, straight, Republicans, Democrats, independents, young and not so young, lead in the great cities and towns all across this country. Over 85% of our population in our cities and metro areas, over 90% of our country's gross domestic product created in our cities and metro areas. We started this year at Tornillo, protesting the separation of children from their mother's breasts and father's arms, one of the great moral issues of our time. We studied America's history of human chattel slavery, of racism and lynchings and oppression, in Montgomery, Alabama, at the National Memorial for Peace and Justice. We prayed together at Auschwitz and Birkenau for the strength of conviction and the power of discernment as we deal with the incredible challenges that America is facing in 2019, as we struggle as a nation to handle many issues we thought we'd put to bed decades ago. Flags and swastikas that brave young men stormed the battlefield at Gettysburg and the beaches of Normandy to defeat divisive ethnic, racial, and religious rhetoric. We established the Mayor and Business Leaders Center for Compassionate and Inclusive Cities because we refuse to believe that this is a dark reflection of who we are, that we know that this is a time when America needs leaders. And I will submit to you that we have an abundance of them right here in this room. I want to say thank you to each and every one of you, my colleagues, who inspire me to do the work that I've done every day this past year. To all of you, to America's mayors, my colleagues, my mentors, my friends, my confidants, when I have challenges in Colombia, when I've been trying to lead this organization, needed guidance this past year, thank you for developing and sustaining this tradition of servant leadership and understanding and embracing the importance of action in the spirit of the Sarah Mae Flemings of this world. The brave souls who marched and bled and cried and died and prayed so that we would inherit a world much better than they knew. You've answered the call to justice, the call of service, the call of action. You've raised your hands, my colleagues, to say, "Here am I, send me," and I'm so thankful to be one of you. I want to thank my family for being here. I want to thank my family for always being here with me. My mom and my dad, Sam and Maggie Benjamin, y'all wave your hands, stand up, whatever you want to do. Just stand up for a second. Stand up for a second. My brother Sam and I were rather precocious children, I would say. And my mom and dad worked so hard for the two of us growing up, early mornings and late nights, a house filled with hugs, love, kisses, never had to worry about the basic necessities of life, shelter and safety and security and nutrition, the things that so many of our babies have to worry about every single day. I didn't have to worry about that because of my mom and dad celebrating 53 years of marriage this year. Thank you, Mom and Dad. Donald and Adrian Gist, my in-laws. I don't know about the rest of you all, but I lucked up in the in-law department. Just stand up for a second. Please stand up. My father-in-law always tells me how lucky I have been to marry his daughter. And I have to remind him that he told her not to date me. That's a whole nother story. 47 years of marriage together, 100 years of marriage between our families. Amazing role models they are for DeAndre and I. My aunts, Vernell and Janetta, are here. I know they are. Wave your hands. All right. Our dear friends, Clint and Sandra Thompson, came all this way as well, too. So please, the Thompsons. And he doesn't want to stand, but my nephew, Donald James DJ, stand up. He is an amazing, strong, beautifully strong young black man. I'm so proud of you, DJ. So proud of you. You are also my child. And I'm so thankful you took the time to come and be here with us today. So you're special to me. So thank you. We are rolling, as you can tell, 14 deep. The Benjamins are here. We're only outnumbered by the beautiful Barnett clan here. So they have us beat this week. DeAndre, my love, thank you for being my rock, an amazing wife, mother, supporter, sounding board, my most constructive critic, advisor, my partner and friend. I thank God for you every single day. Just stand up and wave for a second, please. At home, y'all, by the way, is in South Carolina our gender neutral term, okay? At home, y'all, the girls call me the man baby, because when DeAndre's not home, I am helpless. So they have to take care of me when she's not around. Dee, thanks you for always having my back and taking care of the man baby. As recently as this morning in the hotel room, they called me a man baby, but a whole nother story. Our daughters, Bethany and Jordan Grace, who don't want to stand, but you will stand anyway, so just stand up and wave for a second. I know it may feel weird sometimes, girls, when strangers come up to you at a luau and they know all about you and they've never met you, because I talk about you all the time. To be honest, whenever you're away from home, your mom and I laugh at ourselves because all we do is talk about you when you're away as well. You are our pride and our joy. You represent our hopes and our dreams. Being your father has taught me more than I could ever imagine that words matter, that kind words heal. The highlight of my week is playing puzzles with you. Sleep. Then my Gamecock hooded sweatshirt that Bethany stole from me years ago, or the blanket I bought on a trip in New York City several years ago that Jordan Grace may find herself wrapped up in. They tell me they keep those close because it makes them feel close to me even when I'm away. I love it when you hug me. Give me long hugs, especially when I'm sitting down, because I can press my head up against your chest and hear your heartbeat, and thank God for the wonder of creation and what he gave your mom and I. Seeing you in your success reminds me that both love and genius are statistically spread across every zip code, but that opportunities are not. And it's my job. It's my job, it's our job as leaders of our cities to make sure that every child has the opportunities that our babies have. It's our job to try and lead our cities in such a way. Keep inspiring me, girls. Keep teaching me. Trust me, your daddy's listening to you, and we're working together to try and make a better world. I want to thank my entire team from Columbia, new and old, Ariel and Shalane and Chris and Taylor. 3 days on the job, he gets to go to Hawaii. Who does that? Who does that? Sam and Hayward and Lauren's not here, but help me get prepared for this. Ralph, who work every day to make our capital city, my Columbia, a better place every single day. And Tom, thank you, brother. My friend Tom Cochran, Carlotta, our entire USCM family, a great sacrifice. This staff has been the trusted steward of America's cities. And I thank you so much, Tom, for helping make America's mayors shine every single day. God bless you, brother. Thank you to Brian Barnett and Greg Fisher. Greg, I'm going to let Brian roast you at some later time. You know it's coming. But I will say this. I'm so excited that you will serve together. And remember that it might take a year, and you'll have to be patient, but you will get the last word on Brian Barnett. So patience is a virtue, so keep notes, close notes, and you'll get a chance to chime in at some point. To the Barnetts, to Corinne and your handsome boys, incredible boys, your precious mom, Brian, your brother, your countless family members, friends, and loved ones who've come this far to watch you assume this new responsibility in this organization that we love. You all, please know there's not a more respected leader in this organization than Brian Barnett. We're so thankful to have him step into leadership at the U.S. Conference of Mayors. I want to tell your boys that as your dad will travel this country, indeed the world, building relationships and helping fortify cities, please know how proud he is of his sons, how thankful he is for the young men that you're becoming. He beams with pride as he talks about his boys everywhere he goes. Brian, I'll always have your back, brother. So call on me as you need me, all right? I'm actually going to begin to close right now, guys. And I mean that not like the Baptist preacher close. I'm actually going to close very soon. But as you're pulling together the speech, you think of all the different things you can talk about. You want to talk about the Leadership Institute and Smart Cities and all the different efforts and the countless meetings we held over the year. And infrastructure, and Bethany teases me and she tells me I gesticulate and I talk about infrastructure and innovation and inclusion, which I like pretty much. I enjoy that. Think of all the incredible things we did this year. But I think about the power of the role that we play in our cities. I remember the smell of Brut cologne. Or Brut cologne, although I hadn't smelled it in years, in decades. I remember after working hard all week long to support us, my dad would come home, he'd grab the green plastic bottle off the wooden chest, the tall one on the left side of his bedroom, and splash it on freely to go take my mom out for a night on the town. Some of you wore Brut cologne. A little Brut in here? All right, okay. Flashy blazer, big hats. He was sharp as a tack. I remember my dad wearing Brut to my 6th grade graduation as I delivered my valedictory address from Mr. Markowski's 6th grade class and at PS 223 in Queens, Tom. I remember my dad splashing on his cologne as we went to bury his friend Saul's small children who died in the horrific house fire just mere blocks from our home. My dad's a man's man, a good man, a strong man. Honestly, I never cared for the smell of Brut necessarily. But I'd splash some on. It was dress-up day at August Martin High School, and I wanted to impress a few of the teenage girls. Girls, don't fall for it. Don't fall for it. Because I always associated the strength, the fragrance with strength, because my daddy wore it. And as I've matriculated through an incredibly blessed and an improbable life as a student leader, as a law student at the University of South Carolina, practicing law with a former governor and serving another governor as the youngest member of his cabinet. I've worn a badge and a gun. I've served 2 a.m. warrants in the middle of the night as I ran the state's 2nd largest law enforcement agency in South Carolina. I've met with or dined with 5 presidents of the United States. The smell of Brut cologne in the mayor's office at City Hall overcame me one day this past year, and I became 10-year-old Stephen once again. As Shalane escorted the visitors into our office, rather ornate and recently restored mayor's office, as another father sat across from me, hand in hand with his beautiful wife, as they wept over the senseless loss of their son to gunfire just on the outskirts of our city, not even in the in our incorporated area, but in our city nonetheless, our collective loss all the same. I watched Mr. Jones so closely in a way that I'm not sure that he fully understood, or maybe he did. His hardworking, callous hands, like my father's contractor hands, must have reached up on that wooden chest that morning and splashed on his Brut cologne because he had to take his wife to an important meeting downtown. Mr. Jones was a man's man, a good man, a strong man. And we wept together with his beautiful wife in my office as he asked for help, as he asked for solutions, as he asked for a way forward. Mr. Jones did not call his congressman. He did not go down to the state capitol. He knew that if there were going to be answers, if there was going to be justice, anything would come out of this. The answers would be found by starting at City Hall. Mr. Jones came to see his mayor. He came to see his mayor. We know our fellow citizens, and they know us. They trust us. It is a sacred trust. They know their mayor will stand up for them. They know that when the question is asked, whom shall I send? Who will go for us? That America's mayors will always stand and say, here am I, send me. The challenges before us are great, my friends. That means that our ideas must be that much bolder. The battles of the 21st century will be won by cities in the greatest and most powerful democratic nation in the history of the world, led by our mayors. Mahalo, my friends. May God bless you and keep you, and may God bless the United States Conference of Mayors. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Conference of Mayors Vice President, Rochester Hills Mayor Brian Barnett.
I don't know how you follow what just happened up here. I can only tell you I've been doing this for a year now, so I'm somewhat used to it. I still stand in awe of Mayor Benjamin's ability to capture a room, take us on a journey, and bring us to a place that perhaps we knew he was going to take us, but it still feels new. I continue to be in awe of his leadership and thankful for his friendship, and none of that are in the prepared remarks. Can we give Mayor Benjamin one more round of applause, please? Well, it is a tough transition from that, but we continue on this morning because we have some great speakers and some great agenda items to continue on in our program this morning. And so I'd now like to thank, first, all the sponsors that make this happen, our 87th annual meeting, including, we're extremely grateful for our title sponsor, Airbnb, the American Institute of Architects, AT&T, Axon, Charter Communications, the Coca-Cola Company, Elucid, Genius Plaza, Google, HDR, IKE Smart City, the International Association of Firefighters, Johnson Controls, Caper Capital, Postmates, Signify, Sourcewell, Uber Technologies, Inc., Walmart, Waymo, Waste Management, Inc., Wells Fargo, and I think that's all of them. So let's give them all a big round of applause. To put on a great program like this, you need lots of tremendous community support. Mayor Caldwell and the U.S. Conference of Mayors team has done a great job, and we truly, truly thank all of those folks I just mentioned for their partnership and sponsorship in bringing to us what we know has already started as a great conference and will continue over the next 3 days. It's now my privilege to introduce one of our keynotes and one of our major sponsors from Airbnb, Natalia Marzulli. Is the Director of Experiences for Airbnb, where she oversees global initiatives and strategic partnerships that support Airbnb's policy work. She joined Airbnb from the White House, where she was a senior advisor for the National Economic Council and the Domestic Policy Council. She oversaw the implementation of the Obama administration's policy agenda to ensure consistency with the president's goals. Prior to that, she was a special assistant to the Honorable Tony West at the Department of Justice, where she coordinated national litigation and policy efforts, including litigation resulting in the overturning of the Defense of Marriage Act, challenging state immigration laws, and defending national security policies. Please join me in welcoming our title sponsor, Natalia Marzulli.
Thank you, Mayor Barnett, Mayor Benjamin, Tom Cochran, and Mayor Caldwell for hosting us and for your service. And to everyone in this room, thank you for your service to our country as well. My name is Natalia Merluzzi, and I am the Director of Policy for Airbnb Experiences. Today, I'd like to provide an update on home sharing initiatives we've been working on with your cities, and then turned to a new area of opportunity that I oversee named Airbnb Experiences. Many of you are already familiar with Airbnb because you've traveled with us, or we are in your communities and your constituents are our hosts. Or, in many cases, we have worked with you to establish a tax deal or new rules for home sharing. Airbnb started 10 years ago because 2 of our founders needed to make rent. So they set up a few spare mattresses in their bedroom, and these were their first 3 guests. In the past decade, it's transformed into a global platform with tree houses, castles, and more than 6 million homes across 191 countries and 100,000 cities. Believe it or not, 6 guests check in every second somewhere around the world. Initially, our business started in a few large cities, mostly catering to millennial travelers. As we've grown, our business has also grown up. We're now the go-to destination for families traveling together, senior citizens enjoying retirement, and now, increasingly, business travelers. 5 years ago, we launched Airbnb for Work to make it easier to travel for work without sacrificing the comforts of home. We now have 400,000 companies, public universities, sports teams, and even members of the federal government who use Airbnb for business travel. We have a booth here, and we'd love to talk with you about getting your city workers signed up. As a global platform, we take seriously our relationship with the thousands of cities that our hosts call home. We are proud of the partnerships we've created with you over the past decade, and I'll talk more about those in a moment. I'd like to pause to say, though, that we believe there's always more work we can do. And one of the most important ways we work with cities is around collecting and remitting taxes. As you can see on the screen, in the past 5 years, Airbnb has partnered with over 500 local governments and organizations around the world to promote tourism, collect and remit taxes, and enable home sharing. In the US alone, we have generated over $1 billion in tax revenue since 2014. In cities like Chicago, New Orleans, Seattle, and Los Angeles, among others, our tax revenues are funding important programs supporting affordable housing, homeless youth, and survivors of domestic violence. While we've made a great deal of progress, our teams are working tirelessly to establish additional tax agreements to ensure our community is paying its fair share. Over the years, we've also heard from many of you about the challenges of hosting large-scale events in your communities because of a lack of hotel rooms, and we've responded. Our host community has been a vital partner to dozens upon dozens of cities eager to welcome big sporting events, conferences, conventions, and even music festivals. There's no better example than Atlanta, Georgia during the Super Bowl earlier this year. Super Bowl weekend, 9,000 Airbnb guests put $3.3 million in the pockets of Atlanta families, not to mention all of the money they spent at local restaurants, coffee shops, bars, and boutiques. Importantly, our hosts keep 97% of what they charge. It's supplemental income that they use to pay bills, save for retirement, or even fund a vacation of their own. Where you stay, the neighborhood, the space, the host, is probably the most important part of any trip. We're proud that we have helped millions of travelers discover new neighborhoods far outside of traditional tourist districts. But where you stay is only one part of the trip. To achieve our mission of creating a world where anyone can belong anywhere, we are focused on developing a truly end-to-end travel platform. Where you stay, how you get there, what you do. And today, I want to focus on that last piece, what you do and how you spend your time. A few years ago, we launched our new business called Airbnb Experiences with roughly 500 experiences. These are tours and activities designed and led by local experts and small business owners. Today, we have over 40,000 experiences around the world. We're in over 1,000 cities, and we're increasing 7 times year over year. Airbnb aims to be the easiest place to become an entrepreneur. Tia, a Charleston native whose video you're seeing now, turned her passion for crabbing into a wildly successful experience. And she actually quit her job as a bar manager, and now she's doing this full time. We're using Airbnb's market power to kickstart locals to become entrepreneurs. By listing on our platform, aspiring entrepreneurs automatically have access to an infrastructure that includes insurance coverage and extensive marketing to the millions of visitors who come to our site every day. There's no cost to sign up, and it only takes a few minutes. As we're building our experiences business, we've taken pains to ensure the community reflects the community it serves. which is why we've taken a threefold approach by working with DMOs, small businesses, and nonprofits. Last year, when Airbnb launched experiences in Utah, we partnered with the Utah State Office of Tourism to recruit hosts recommended by the Tourism Office. I'd like to play a video of one of those hosts. Micah Young, a local high school teacher from Orderville, Utah, started East Zion Experiences to offer guests on our platform an opportunity of a lifetime to propel down into a crack in the earth.
We don't get out enough. We get caught up in work and society and cell phones. That's not the important part of life. Once you're out in the canyon, parts of our brain starts to come alive and fire, and things are happening inside that are just fantastic.
You're geared and ready to go.
Okay. I'm pretty nervous. I'm sure I'll be even more nervous once I get over the edge.
We are literally about to drop into a crack in the earth.
Okay, here comes Mallory. Take your time.
Where'd I put my leg?
Just gotta trust the rock. I gotcha.
This is crazy. Micah, I don't like this.
Mallory, I got you the whole way. Realize you're A-okay now.
I'm not looking down.
You've got to take a break and look down.
Micah, don't make me look down. If I go through my life just not doing things that scare me, what's the point of living?
So Micah's experience is an example of the type of partnership we can do with state and city tourism boards. For us, we get great hosts who are licensed experts, and destinations gain a new way to develop entrepreneurship opportunities and jobs. When we started experiences, we wanted to enable small businesses to reap the benefits of the digital economy. We know that roughly 50% of our hosts around the world say they are already small business owners, and many of them are saying they've seen an increase in visitors because of Airbnb experiences, which is why we are creating partnerships with local chambers of commerce, such as the one we have with the San Francisco Chamber of Commerce, to recruit more small business hosts. Experiences are not only creating new opportunities for individuals and small businesses, we also have social impact experiences hosted by nonprofit organizations. Social impact experiences enable nonprofits to raise money and awareness of their causes on our platform. And for these experiences, Airbnb forgoes our fee, which means that nonprofits keep 100% of the revenue. To date, nonprofits have generated over $5 million on our platform. Our current partnerships are just the beginning. We want to work with more cities to create more entrepreneurs, support more small businesses, and benefit more nonprofits. We are building a unique product that brings together people from all over the world, locals and travelers, hosts and guests, to share, to learn, to grow. And for those of us building it, it's about more than travel. It's about fulfilling Airbnb's mission of creating a world where anyone can belong anywhere. I invite you and the community you're here representing to join us on our journey. Please contact us at mayors@airbnb.com. Thank you.
Let's give another hand for Airbnb and thank them for our sponsorship. We thank Mayor Caldwell for talking about what happened here in 1963, June 9th, 1963. I just thought I'd give you a few comments about what was going on back then. June 9th, 1963, President Kennedy came here. 2 days later, on June 11th, 1963, George Wallace stood in the schoolhouse door trying to stop Vivian Malone and John Hood from registering as students at Alabama. In that same week, President Kennedy met with religious leaders. In that same week, he brought congressional leaders, Democratic leaders, Republican leaders So there was a lot going on, during that time. So he knew that mayors could deliver on his vision to implement the changes that needed to be made in our country. He knew that Washington was Washington. If you will listen to his speech, you will hear him say, we can do things without Washington. And of course, we say the same things today. But here's what he really knew. He was a very practical politician. And he knew if he was going to get the job done, he better come and talk to the mayors. And he did. He gave a great speech at Rice University in '62 on how we should go to the moon. Again, he was a very practical man. He had written a book, While England Slept. He was aware that the Germans had the V-2 rockets. And so he went to see Werner von Braun, who we had secretly brought in to this country. And he was obsessed with putting a man on the moon. So he brought the best of the best to create a jet propulsion rocket that would do what it did 50 years ago next month. And it didn't take a rocket scientist for him to know where to go and who to come to do what was right in this country on civil rights. He knew that he could count on the mayors. And ladies and gentlemen, since 1963, we have delivered. We have delivered on his vision, and we can be proud of it. It has been a long and hard struggle. After he was taken from us, in the debate of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, it was a white senator, Richard Russell, that named a building after him, who co-signed the Southern Manifesto and fought hard defending integration, promoting segregation and white supremacy. But at the same time, another white guy from Atlanta, Georgia, the city too busy to hate, a businessman named Ivan Allen, the mayor of Atlanta, came to Washington for the United States Conference of Mayors supporting the Civil Rights Bill. So this is a special place. This Hawaiian Village Hotel. It began here. The civil rights vision of President Kennedy came here. But the struggle continues. And we are back here leading stronger than ever, fighting for the basic human rights and civil rights. Ladies and gentlemen, we will join hand in hand. We are not afraid. We shall overcome. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, aloha. I'm here in short to discuss with you a problem which is not local but national, not northern or southern, eastern or western, but a national problem, a national challenge, a problem and challenge and responsibility and opportunity. The Supreme Court has made it clear beyond dispute that no local ordinance requiring segregation is constitutional. But the final responsibility, after such legislation is enacted, will rest with you as mayors on the local level. It is clear to me that the time for token moves and
talk is past, that these rights are going to be won, and that it's our responsibility, yours and mine, to see that they're won in a peaceful and constructive way, and not won in the streets. The amalgamation of all these urban development problems, I believe, can be most effectively maintained by the creation of a new cabinet post to concern ourselves with life in the cities. Federal action, including additional federal legislation, can help, and I think state action can help. But in the last analysis, what happens in Birmingham or Chicago or Los Angeles or Atlanta depends in large measure upon the leadership of those communities. We will back you up. We will work with you in every way possible. But the mayor of every metropolitan city, in every section of America, must be aware of the difficult challenges he now faces. My fellow chief executives, may I say this: the improvement of race relations and the fulfillment of human rights is a continuing problem and continuing challenge. I do not propose to limit our mutual concern to one brief address. I hope to meet with many of you in the White House in the near future. I must say I was impressed by the willingness of so many mayors to move ahead in this area. I ask that you act with wisdom and foresight in these matters, not merely to maintain the luster of American ideals, not merely for the peace of our country, but for the good of your own community.
Ladies and gentlemen, when President Kennedy came here in 1963, he was coming back from Japan, and he spoke to the U.S. Conference of Mayors and then went home, and his life came to an end 5 months later. And it's fitting that our President, Barack Obama, a native son from here, when he had a chance to appoint his ambassador to Japan, he appointed John F. Kennedy's daughter. You know, today at this conference, we have mayors from Japan. We have the governor of Tokyo, the world's largest city today. We have the mayor of Hiroshima, where the World War II came to an end. We have the mayor of Nagaoka, who was firebombed to the ground in August 3rd of 1945, right at the end of the war. The mayor of Uejima, whose school sailing ship was sunk by an American submarine, and the mayor of Chigasaki, which is all about aloha. But they're here in part because of our ambassador to Japan, who represented her father so well in one of the greatest countries and greatest friends of the United States of America. And that person is Ambassador Caroline Kennedy. Give her a big round of applause.
folks. It's so great to be here. I hope you're still going to clap when this is done, but thank you all. Thank you all so much. This is such an honor. Thank you for inviting me to join this important gathering at this critical time. I want to thank Chairman Benjamin and our host Mel Caldwell and the entire city of Honolulu for welcoming us. And I especially want to recognize Tom Cochran, who's been a loyal friend to generations of Kennedys and a vital partner to the Institute of Politics at Harvard Kennedy School. I hope some of you will come visit us and participate in our programs there. I know some of you already have, but thank you, Tom, for everything you've done for us and for my family. So I'm here as the great-granddaughter of a mayor, John F. Fitzgerald of Boston. And it's great to be here with Mayor Walsh. So that's who my father was named for. He was known as Honey Fitz because he had a great singing voice and he could charm a dog off the meat truck, as the saying goes. He was the first Irish Catholic mayor of Boston in a time when no Irish need apply signs were common, and he taught his grandsons everything they needed to know about politics. My Uncle Teddy loved to tell the story that when Honey Fitz was older, he would take the train down to Florida to visit the family in Palm Beach for the winter. Instead of playing golf like the other retirees, every afternoon Honey Fitz would drive over to the fancy Breakers Hotel and set himself up in the lobby. He tipped the bellman to ring when a new guest arrived, once if they were from Massachusetts and twice if they were from Boston. And it's always great to be back in Hawaii. I was 8 when I first visited here. The big hits on the radio were Wild Thing and Born Free. And that really sums up the exhilaration I felt at being here in this magical place. Waikiki was a small main street. The Secret Service drove us around in convertibles. We camped out on the Big Island. We met Don Ho and Duke Kahanamoku. We took surfing and ukulele lessons. And I learned 3 hula dances, which I can still remember. More recently, when I was ambassador to Japan, I saw how closely our history has linked our two countries through this place. Beginning in the 19th century with waves of Japanese immigrants who came here to work on the plantations and farms, through the catastrophic attack on Pearl Harbor that brought us into World War II, to PACOM's role in maintaining the peace and security of the Asia Pacific, Hawaii continues to play a critical role. I was proud to be the first child of a Pacific War veteran to serve as ambassador, and proud to be in Japan when Governor Hige, the first Hawaiian governor of Okinawan descent, returned to the land of his ancestors to reaffirm the ties between our two countries. And it's great to be here with the governor of Tokyo and all the Japanese mayors representing the 1.6 million Japanese who visit Hawaii every year. But the real reason I'm here today is because the last time that the United States Conference of Mayors met in Honolulu was June 9th, 1963, and President Kennedy addressed your gathering. It was the beginning of 3 of the most consequential days of his presidency. A few months after the Cuban Missile Crisis, at a critical time for the civil rights movement after the Birmingham riots, at the beginning of what was feared would be a violent summer. Here's a summary of what happened that week. On June 9th, my father spoke to the mayors about the most urgent issue of the time, civil rights. As we saw, he laid out the challenges and the responsibilities, the role of the federal government, the states, and the cities. He offered a program of 5 specific measures to improve employment and educational outcomes for African Americans. But he made clear that the moral and constitutional crisis of civil rights had to be solved by citizens and their leaders in communities across the United States. The federal government would help, he said, but the final responsibility will rest with you as mayors on the local level. The next day, on June 10th, he gave perhaps the most important speech of his presidency. In a commencement address at American University, he set forth a strategy of peace. Drawing on the lessons of the Cuban Missile Crisis and determined to avoid the sort of miscalculation that could precipitate a nuclear conflict, a miscalculation that could easily happen today, he emphasized his belief in working with allies, with institutions, and talking to our adversaries. He announced a hotline to Moscow to prevent miscommunication and a unilateral U.S. moratorium on atmospheric nuclear testing. Most importantly, he called upon the Soviet Union to join the United States in negotiating comprehensive nuclear disarmament. 2 months later, with Britain and the USSR, he would sign the Limited Nuclear Test Ban Treaty banning atmospheric testing, the proudest achievement of his presidency. Later that same day, in D.C., he signed the Equal Pay Act, a landmark bill prohibiting gender-based pay discrimination. That was in 1963, okay? The next morning on June 11th, in violation of a federal court order, Governor George Wallace of Alabama made his famous stand in the schoolhouse door to block African American students from desegregating the university. President Kennedy federalized the National Guard and forced him to back down. That night, my father spoke to the nation from the Oval Office, putting the full force of the federal government behind the cause for civil rights. He announced legislation which became the Civil Rights Act of 1964 after his assassination. What struck me when I read my father's speech here was how strongly it still resonates today. Despite the progress we've made, not enough has changed. Racism is still the unfinished business of America. It was the central challenge of President Kennedy's time, just as it is in our own. And his legacy is being rolled back by this administration. As we celebrate the 4th of July next weekend, all Americans must recommit to the ideals of the Declaration of Independence. Thinking back to the 1960s also reminds us that we have faced difficult and divided times before. We make progress by recommitting ourselves to the fundamental values of equality, justice, diversity, tolerance, and service to one another and to our country. If you really think about it, the theme of President Kennedy's 3 important days was reconciliation, the need to understand each other, to work through our differences, to create a more just and hopeful future for all Americans. That work is as important today as it was in 1963, but the roles have changed. Back then, mayors looked to the federal government for support. Today, in many cases, it's the reverse. Whether it's on climate change, immigration, or education, mayors are leading on the issues and working to build safer, more just, more resilient, more prosperous, and inclusive communities. Not only is Washington sometimes not helping, it's asking you to do more with less. But mayors are finding ways to create community, to build partnerships between the public and private sectors, and find innovative solutions to persistent challenges. Congratulations. I've seen it firsthand in New York City. After the tragedy of 9/11, I joined thousands of New Yorkers who wanted to give back to the city that had given us so much. For me, that meant volunteering in the New York City Department of Education under Mayor Bloomberg, working to engage the private sector in system-wide school reform. I chose education because as adults, we have no more important responsibility than to raise and educate our children. It's an economic issue, it's a national security issue, and just as it was in 1963, it's a civil rights issue. And it's often all 3 at once. Right now, we have 2 school systems in this country. Consider that in 2015, the United States was ranked 20th in reading scores among OECD countries. But if you disaggregate by race, white kids would rank number 3, while black students, if they were a country, would score at number 35. And it's not easy for them to catch up because African American students are less likely than white students to have access to college-ready courses. In 2011 and 12, only 57% of black students had access to math and science courses necessary for college readiness, compared to 71% of white students. But in New York, I saw the difference it made when the mayor could be held accountable for progress in the nation's largest school system. I saw the impact of $300 million from the private sector to incubate system-wide innovation and reform. And I saw the difference it made when New York City created 600 small community-based schools where kids had teachers and administrators who knew them and their families and were there to help them succeed. Graduation rates at these small schools improved by over 9.4% over larger traditional high schools. And that progress has continued for the past decade. It makes sense. We all know that kids need as many caring adults in their lives as possible. And schools are too often the only place where they can build those relationships. Creating learning communities where students can access the services and emotional supports they need is our collective responsibility, because the kids in our cities are all of our children. Mayors are the leaders in that effort. I know it's hard when you don't have the responsibility for the schools, but you still have responsibility for the kids. You are the one person that everyone in the city knows. You're a role model, a mentor, a symbol. At a time when job opportunities for young people have shrunk by 30% over the past 20 years and are still collapsing, by knitting together businesses, city agencies, and community-based institutions to provide summer jobs, internships, workforce development, you are the person who has to provide pathways of hope for our kids. It takes creativity and courage, and I've seen both firsthand. As a 2018 co-chair of the Bloomberg Mayor's Challenge, which supports innovative solutions to city problems, I visited Philadelphia, where Mayor Kenny's administration was piloting an alternative to keep kids out of the criminal justice system. When a young person is arrested, instead of locking them in an adult holding cell and processing them like adults, they'd be taken to the hub, where they'd receive trauma-informed interventions, be connected to a family member, given access to social and emotional assessments, and referrals to services and programming. I met kids who had been arrested numerous times, and they talked about the fear and trauma of arrest and the difference that a program like this would have made in their lives. Only strong support from City Hall can make coordination work in agencies that are already overworked and under-resourced. That kind of coordination is what city residents often need most, and only mayors can make it happen. Last year, the JFK Library and the Harvard Institute of Politics gave our New Frontier Award to Mayor Tubbs of Stockton, California. Yes. We honored his work bringing together the business community with philanthropic foundations to provide $20 million in scholarships to kids who never dreamed they'd go to college. He also reduced the violent murder rate by 40% and stabilized the city's finances. As the youngest mayor in the city's history, he told me how unprepared he was for the symbolic power of his office and how hard he works to use that power to have a positive impact on young people seeking hope. Bringing people together to solve problems has always been the work of mayors. While national politicians can talk about doing something, mayors have to get things done. You do it by bringing people together, and despite what we hear about how divided people are, I see all the time how people want to work together to improve their communities. I know that sometimes it's hard. My father believed that courage is the most essential quality in public life, and local politics takes guts. That's why we've given the JFK Profile and Courage Award to so many mayors. Everyone knows who the mayor is, so everyone can be mad at them, especially when they do the right thing. Back in 2005, we honored Atlanta Mayor Shirley Franklin for forming alliances across party lines bringing together community and state government to bring the city back from the brink of fiscal disaster and restore ethics in government. In 2014, we gave the award to Georgia Mayor Paul Bridges, who risked his political career for publicly opposing a controversial law against immigrants in his state. And last year, Mitch Landrieu was honored for removing the Confederate statues in New Orleans. The debate over those symbols of oppression educated the entire American people, go Mitch, about our history, and gave us all the opportunity to re-examine systemic racism and continue the work of reconciliation. Still, while local politics takes courage, I think these examples show us that some of our country's toughest issues can best be tackled at the local level, because you all have the ability to reset the table and bring back civility, like Mayor Gillum did when he closed the street and 1,200 Tallahassee residents joined him to break bread together. As our world becomes smaller and more connected, reconciling our differences is more important than ever. It's something I learned about from my father's example, and it connects to our visit here. Bear with me while I go back in time for a moment. As many of you know, on a dark night in August 1943, while patrolling in the South Pacific, my father's PT boat was sliced in half by the Japanese destroyer Amagiri. PT-109 burst into flames, killing 2 crew members. My father towed 1 injured man and guided the 11 surviving crew 4 miles through shark-infested waters to an island where they hid from Japanese patrols. After 5 days, he spotted some local islanders and gave them a message he had carved on a coconut shell. They delivered it to Australian coast watchers on a nearby island, who arranged rescue. The PT-109 story was made into a hit song and a Hollywood movie, but it didn't end on that island. What many people don't know is that after the war, throughout the 1950s, my father corresponded with the Japanese destroyer captain. Like my father, Captain Hanami returned home from the war and entered public service. In fact, you all appreciate this, he became mayor of his town in Fukushima. One of the most moving moments I experienced as ambassador was meeting his widow, who showed me one of her most treasured possessions. It was a photo from President Kennedy, which he had signed to her husband with the inscription, "To Captain Hanami, late enemy, present friend." I knew that my father had hoped to be the first sitting president to visit Japan. It was planned to be the first state visit of his second term. He wanted to show the world that reconciliation is a source of strength. As ambassador, I tried in a small way to carry that hope forward to a new generation. My father's correspondence with Captain Hanami, like countless other individual acts of sacrifice, courage, kindness, and friendship, built the U.S.-Japan alliance into the strongest in the world today. It illustrates what happens when we reach out to others in search of our common humanity, and it helped me advocate for one of the most significant events in U.S.-Japan history, President Obama's visit to Hiroshima in 2016. Although in hindsight the visit seems inevitable, it was high risk and high stakes for both sides. After all, the idea had been floated before, and it had been turned down for 70 years. In both countries, some senior officials remained opposed, and the public was divided. In the US, when the idea first surfaced publicly, President Obama was criticized from the right for his continued weakness. It would be another stop on his apology tour. On the left, the visit was deemed hypocritical for the leader of the country with the world's largest nuclear arsenal. That it was in the middle of a campaign year, of a presidential campaign, amplified the political risk. In Japan, the idea of a presidential visit had always been predicated on the demand for an apology from America, a non-starter for the US. To welcome a US leader without securing that guarantee was anathema to Prime Minister Abe's conservative base and a segment of the general public. The visit was long hoped for, but if it didn't go well, the Prime Minister faced a possible loss of his position and deep and lasting disillusionment with the United States. Despite the strength of the US-Japan alliance, the wounds of war were still visible and raw. Both sides were tense as we headed for Hiroshima. The Japanese were concerned about what the president was going to say, how long he would speak, and whether his remarks would do justice to the magnitude of what happened there. The White House refused to share a draft. I was glad that no one knew that that President Obama was still working on his speech when Air Force One touched down. But then, after laying a wreath at the eternal flame with the Prime Minister, President Obama stood back to speak to the crowd and to the ages. He asked the audience to focus on the larger meaning of Hiroshima, one event in a global war that claimed the lives of 60 million people, but an event which changed forever the way we think about our humanity. Its significance lay, he said, in its ability to fuel a moral revolution, to remind us that mankind has both the power to create and to destroy. He urged us to see one another not as enemies, but as members of one human family, who all love their children, who want peace instead of war, who want their leaders to choose hope instead of fear. He ended with words I saw him change on Air Force One. The draft said, "That is a future we can choose, a future in which Hiroshima and Nagasaki are known not as the dawn of atomic warfare, but as its end." But the president read, "That is a future we can choose, a future in which Hiroshima and Nagasaki are known not as the dawn of atomic warfare, but as the start of our own moral awakening." His change places the responsibility for the future on each one of us. When he finished, he stepped back and hugged an elderly Japanese survivor who had lost his entire family in the attack. Their embrace touched the heart of the Japanese people and was followed by an outpouring of emotion and gratitude toward America. A few months later, Prime Minister Abe became the first leader of Japan to visit the USS Arizona Memorial at Pearl Harbor, where you're going this afternoon. He tossed flowers into the water and prayed. And then a little while later, in a typically Japanese gesture, he knelt to exchange business cards with an elderly Navy survivor of the attack. In these iconic moments, I saw firsthand the power of engaged, principled leadership to renew our faith in each other and set an example for a world in conflict. These symbolic gestures of national reconciliation may have taken 70 years to occur, but they showed the world that healing is possible, and strength comes from the hard work of understanding and partnership. President Obama's visit to Hiroshima was an important historical moment, and for me, it had profound personal meaning as well. I had first visited Hiroshima in college with my Uncle Teddy. We met survivors of the attack, women who had been in college themselves when the bomb was dropped. They had suffered lifelong effects of radiation and had become messengers for peace. And I knew that President Kennedy's proudest achievement was the limited nuclear test ban treaty, and it came as a direct result of his speech at American University the day after he spoke to this group. In that speech, he said, "Peace is dynamic, not static. Peace is a process, a way of solving problems." He said it required a commitment that each generation would have to renew. That speech has many of his most prophetic and important lines, and a paragraph that was always special for me. He said, "And if we cannot now end our differences, at least we can help make the world safe for diversity. For in the final analysis, Our most basic common link is that we all inhabit this small planet. We all breathe the same air. We all cherish our children's future, and we are all mortal. Representing America abroad taught me firsthand what we are known for, what we are most admired and respected for. It's not our military might, but it's our ideals. Not what we demand of others, but what we give, what we share, how we help. What my father and Captain Hanami understood, what President Obama demonstrated, and what so many of you live every day in big and small ways, is a willingness to bridge divides, even when it's not popular. What they showed was that reconciliation, like peace, is a process, a way of solving problems. And what lasts, what leads to real change, is when people transform that understanding into active citizenship, into a commitment to work together. My father's most urgent message was the need for America and individual Americans to stay engaged, to ask ourselves what we can do for our country. It's a message that rings as true and clear as ever. And there's no better place to model that hard work than in our cities, and no better people to lead it than all of you. So thank you. Thank you for having me. God bless, and happy 4th of July.
You guys are amazing. That's awesome. Ambassador Kennedy has agreed to take a couple of questions from mayors. We are way over schedule. So there's only one request I have, is that if you ask a question, actually make sure it's a question and not a statement. Let's keep it tight so we can get back on schedule. That was an amazing speech, and I think it shows the connectivity between President Kennedy's visit with us and Ambassador Kennedy. It shows that America, although we're in a perfect union, we have great days behind us, even better days ahead of us because of this type of leadership. Thank you, Madam Ambassador. Questions for the Ambassador? We have a microphone. Please. Yes, sir. Mayors? Yeah, please. And then, all right. Yeah. What's that? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Not a question. Thank you very much again, Ambassador Kennedy, that your great efforts to make Obama's visit possible and Obama's visit successful. We like to thank her on behalf of the mayor and citizens and Hibakusha of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And I'd like to preach that us, again, would work for the world peace in partnership with the United States and other countries to make sure that process of peace would be taken by all of us. We would encourage the dialogue, and we will not leave anybody behind, and we'll make the world like an orchestra. The different people work together to make a greater peace with you. And please trust us that we'll be with you all together to make the world a better place. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
One last question. Mayor, we want to thank you for your leadership, the work that you do. We're proud to co-sponsor the resolution as we push for the end of nuclear proliferation and your leadership across the globe in that space. With no more questions, thank you all so much. One last round of applause for Ambassador Kennedy. You answered all questions. That's what we do. And this does conclude the morning opening session. Thank you all so much. Hey, Bob.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending this morning's plenary. At this time,